What comes from without cannot be determined beforehand. So it was that Quan Long Fong was killed, Pecan immolated, and the court of Chi made to feign himself mad, while Eli died and Xie and Zhou both perished. Rulers all wish their ministers to be faithful, but that faithfulness may not secure their confidence. Hence, Wu Yun became a wanderer along the Chuang, and Chang Hong died in Shu, where the people preserved his blood for 3 years, when it became changed into green jade. Parents all wish their sons to be filial, but that filial duty may not secure their love. When wood is rubbed against wood, it begins to burn. When metal is subjected to fire, it melts and flows. When the yin and yang act awry, heaven and earth are greatly perturbed. And on this comes the crash of thunder, and from the rain comes fire that consumes great locust trees. The case of men is still worse. They are troubled between two pitfalls from which they cannot escape. Crystallis like, they can accomplish nothing. Their minds are as if hung up between heaven and earth, now comforted, now pitied. They are plunged in difficulties. The ideas of profit and of injury rub against each other and produce in men a very great fire. The harmony of the mind is consumed in the mass of men. Their moon-like intelligence cannot overcome the inward fire. They thereupon fall away more and more, and the course which they would pursue is altogether lost. The family of Zhuang being poor, he went to ask the loan of some rice from Marquis, superintendent of the Ho, who said, "Yes, I shall be getting the tax money from the people soon, and I will then lend you 300 ounces of silver. Will that do?" Zhuang flushed with anger and said, "On the road yesterday, as I was coming here, I heard someone calling out. On looking round, I saw a goby fish in the carriage rut and said to it, 'Fish, what has brought you here?' The goby fish said, 'I am minister of waves in the eastern sea. Have you, sir, a gallon or a pint of water to keep me alive?' I replied, 'Yes, I am going south to see the king of Wu and Yue, and I will then lead a stream from the western Chuang to meet you. Will that do?' The goby fish flushed with anger and said, 'I have lost my proper element and can do nothing for myself. But if I could get a gallon or a pint of water, I should keep alive.' Then do what you propose. You had better look for me in the fish market." A son of the Duke of Ren, having provided himself with a great hook, a powerful black line, and 50 steers to be used as bait, squatted down on Mount Kwai and threw the line into the eastern sea. Morning after morning, he angled thus and for a whole year caught nothing. At the end of that time, a great fish swallowed the bait and dived down, dragging the great hook with him. Then it rose to the surface in a flurry and flapped its fins till the white waves rose like hills and the waters were lashed into fury. The noise was like that of imps and spirits and spread terror for 1,000 li. The prince, having got such a fish, cut it in slices and dried them. From the Khan River to the east, and from Dongwu to the north, there was not one who did not eat his full from that fish. and in subsequent generations. Storytellers of small abilities have all repeated the story to one another with astonishment. But if the prince had taken his rod with a fine line and gone to pools and ditches and watched for minnows and gobbies, it would have been difficult for him to get a large fish. Those who dress up small tales to obtain favor of the magistrates are far from being men of great understanding, and therefore one who has not heard the story of this scion of Ren is not fit to take part in the government of the world. Far is he from being so. Some literati, students of the odes and ceremonies, were breaking open a mound over a grave. The superior among them spoke down to the others. Day is breaking in the east. How is the thing going on? The younger men replied, We have not yet opened his jacket and skirt, but there is a pearl in the mouth, as it is said in the ode. The bright green grain is growing on the sides of the mound. While living, he gave nothing away. Why, when dead, should he hold a pearl in his mouth? Thereupon they took hold of the whiskers and pulled at the beard, while the superior introduced a piece of fine steel and gradually separated the jaws so as not to injure the pearl in the mouth. A disciple of Lao Liza, while he was out gathering firewood, met with Confucius. On his return, he told his master, saying, There is a man there, the upper part of whose body is long and the lower part short. He is slightly humpbacked, and his ears are far back. When you look at him, he seems occupied with the cares of all within the four seas. I do not know whose son he is. Lao Liza said, Is Cho. Call him here. When Confucius came, he said to him, Cho, put away your personal conceit and airs of wisdom, and show yourself to be indeed a superior man. Confucius bowed and was retiring, when he abruptly changed his manner and asked, Will the object I am pursuing be thereby advanced? Lao Liza replied, You cannot bear the sufferings of this one age, and are stubbornly regardless of the evils of myriad ages. Is it that you purposely make yourself thus unhappy, or is it that you have not the ability to comprehend the case? Your obstinate purpose to make men rejoice in your joy is your lifelong shame, the procedure of a mediocre man. You want to lead men by your fame. You want to bind them to you by your secret art, rather than praising Yao and condemning Che. You had better forget them both and shut up your tendency to praise. If you reflect on it, it does nothing but injury. Your action in it is entirely wrong. The sage is full of anxiety and indecision in undertaking anything, and so he is always successful. But what shall I say of your conduct? It is all affectation. The ruler Yuan of Song once dreamed at midnight that a man with disheveled hair peeped in at a side door and said, I was coming from the abyss of Cai Lu, commissioned by the clear Chuang to go to the place of Feng Yi, Earl of the Ho. But the fisherman Yuzi has caught me. When the ruler Yuan awoke, he caused the diviner to divine the meaning of the dream and was told, This is a marvelous tortoise. The ruler asked if among the fishermen There was one called Yuzi, and being told by his attendants that there was, he gave orders that he should be summoned to court. Accordingly, the man next day appeared at court, and the ruler said, "Have you caught lately?" The reply was, "I have caught in my net a white tortoise, sieve-like, and 5 cubits round." "Present the prodigy here," said the ruler. When it came, once and again he wished to kill it, once and again he wished to keep it alive. Doubting in his mind what to do, he had recourse to divination and obtained the answer. To kill the tortoise for use in divining will be fortunate. Accordingly, they cut the creature open and perforated its shell in 72 places. There was not a single divining slip which failed. Confucius said, "The spirit-like tortoise could show itself in a dream to the ruler Yuan, and yet it could not avoid the net of Yuzi. Its wisdom could respond on 72 perforations without failing in a single divination, and yet it could not avoid the agony of having its bowels scooped out." We see from this that wisdom is not without its perils, and spirit-like intelligence does not reach to everything. A man may have the greatest wisdom, but there are myriad men scheming against him. Fishes do not fear the net, though they fear the pelican. Put away your small wisdom, and your great wisdom will be bright. Discard your skillfulness, and you will become naturally skillful. A child, when it is born, needs no great master, and yet it becomes able to speak, living as it does among those who are able to speak. Huizi said to Zhuang, "You speak, sir, of what is of no use." The reply was, "When a man knows what is not useful, you can begin to speak to him of what is useful. The earth, for instance, is certainly spacious and great, but what a man uses is only sufficient ground for his feet. If, however, a fisher yawned by the side of his feet down to the yellow springs, could the man still make use of it?" Huizi said, "He could not use it." Zhuangzi rejoined, "Then the usefulness of what is of no use is clear." Zhuangzi said, "If a man has the power to enjoy himself in any pursuit, can he be kept from doing so? If he has not the power, can he so enjoy himself? There are those whose aim is bent on concealing themselves, and those who are determined that their doing shall leave no trace. Alas, they both shirk the obligations of perfect knowledge and great virtue. The latter fall and cannot recover themselves. The former rush on like fire and do not consider what they are doing. Though men may stand to each other in the relation of ruler and minister, that is but for a time. In a changed age, one of them would not be able to look down on the other. Hence, it is said, the perfect man views no traces of his conduct. To honor antiquity and despise the present time is characteristic of learners, but even the disciples Wei have to look at the present age, and who can avoid being carried along by its course? It is only the perfect man who is able to enjoy himself in the world and not be deflected from the right, to accommodate himself to others and not lose himself. He does not learn their lessons, he only takes their ideas into consideration and does not discard them as different from his own. It is the penetrating eye that gives clear vision, acute ear that gives quick hearing, the discriminating nose that gives discernment of odors, the practiced mouth that gives the enjoyment of flavors, the active mind that acquires knowledge, and the far reaching knowledge that constitutes virtue. In no case do these connections like to be obstructed. Obstruction produces stoppage. Stoppage, continuing without intermission, arrests all progress. With this, all injurious effects spring up. The knowledge of all creatures depends on their breathing. But if their breath is not abundant, it is not the fault of heaven, which tries to penetrate them with it day and night without ceasing. Men shut their pores against it. The womb encloses a large and empty space. The heart has its spontaneous and enjoyable movements. If their apartment is not roomy, wife and mother-in-law will be bickering. If the heart has not its spontaneous and enjoyable movements, the 6 faculties of perception will be in mutual collision. Great forests, heights, and hills are pleasant to men because their spirits cannot overcome those distracting influences. Virtue overflows into the love of fame. The love of fame overflows into violence. Schemes originate in the urgency of circumstances. The show of wisdom comes from rivalry. The fuel of strife is produced from the obstinate maintenance of one's own views. The business of offices should be apportioned in accordance with the approval of all. In spring, when the rain and the sunshine come seasonably, vegetation grows luxuriantly, and sickles and hoes begin to be prepared. More than half of what have fallen down becomes straight, and we do not know how. Stillness and silence are helpful to those who are ill. Rubbing the corners of the eyes is helpful to the aged. Rest serves to calm agitation, but they are the toiled and troubled who have recourse to these things. Those who are at ease and have not had such experiences do not care to ask about them. The spirit-like man has had no experience of how it is that the sagely man keeps the world in awe, and so he does not inquire about it. The sagely man has had no experience of how it is that the man of ability and virtue keeps his age in awe, and so he does not inquire about it. The man of ability and virtue has had no experience of how it is that the superior man keeps his state in awe, and so he does not inquire about it. The superior man has had no experience of how it is that the small man keeps himself in agreement that he should inquire about it. The keeper of the Yang gate on the death of his father showed so much skill in emaciating his person that he received the rank of pattern for officers. Half the people of his neighborhood, in consequence, carried their emaciation to such a point that they died. When Yao wished to resign the throne to Xu Yu, the latter ran away. When Tong offered his to Wu Kuang became angry. When Shi Ta heard it, he led his disciples and withdrew to the river Quan. The abstinences and privations in mourning were so many that there was a danger of their seriously injuring the health, which was forbidden, where the feudal princes came and condoled with them. Fishing baskets are employed to catch fish, but when the fish are got, the men forget the baskets. Snares are employed to catch hares, but when the hares are got, men forget the snares. Words are employed to convey ideas, but when the ideas are grasped, men forget the words. Fain would I talk with a man who has forgot the words.